Hello, collective. Today I had the great pleasure of recording my first episode with my very dear friend. Friend just almost does not seem adequate because we've probably been friends for 34 years now, and she is one of my favorite people. I don't have a lot of people in life that I confide in with like I do with her. She has been a very integral person in my own growth and development. She is one of the smartest people that I've ever known. She's very honest. She's the first person to be there when someone needs something. She is incredibly educated. She has her own travel business, and I'll link it in the description so that you all can go ahead and like and follow her YouTube page. She only books travel for her closest friends and family. She's a mom, and she's just, I don't have enough words to describe Angel, and I don't think I have enough words to like really convey what she means to me. And I'm getting teary because I just feel so grateful to have her in my life. Like it's almost like she's more than a friend to me. Like she's literally one of my sisters. And there's nothing I wouldn't do for her or her son. Like there's absolutely nothing I wouldn't do for her. And I'm happy she's here on the Marital Advice episode because she has been such a source of good advice for my husband and myself. She has been our biggest advocate, our biggest cheerleader. I feel so blessed to have traveled 34 years with her, 34 years of friendship, of good friendship. And when I say we've had the highest of highs and lowest of lows, we've experienced it all together. Birth, marriage, divorce, the loss of our loved ones. We've been there for one another. And I'm excited to share her with you. And I can't wait for her to come back. And I hope that you all love this episode as much as I loved recording it. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Calm and Culture Collective with me, Denise. And I am joined, well, first, this is my first episode. It's the inaugural episode. And what better person to have here than Angela, bestie. She is one of the most educated people that I know. She holds an advanced degree from NYU, and she is a jack of many trades. She is perhaps, like I always say, that I can't really fall out with her for real because she knows all of my business. She knows where all of the bones are buried. And if I was doing something crazy, she was either talking me off the ledge or driving the car. I'm just going to put that out there. But no, like she is incredibly loyal, incredibly honest, and in addition to being a mom, she's very qualified to give advice on this topic. This is our marital advice episode. She's very qualified because she's been married for a long time. And one of the reasons that I'm still married is because of her advice. She is also a lot of things to a lot of people. And I don't know what else to say except that I think that she's one of the best people that I've ever known. And I'm so blessed to have her in my life. I do want to mention that she's also a travel agent. She has her own travel channel that I will link. She has her own travel business. She only books for family and close friends, but she does give a lot of advice. If you're interested in becoming a travel professional, you definitely want to reach out to Angel because she could help you with that. So, welcome, Angel.
Thank you. What an amazing intro. I love it. You might need to edit some of that out. That was
I will.
a lot. Okay.
There's some of it out, of course, of course. But how are you today?
I'm okay. It's a busy day, but I'm good. How about you?
Today it's a busy day for me also. I'm off today and I had some errands earlier and I have some errands after this, but that's okay. We'll make it do what it does, right?
We always do.
So today we are talking about marital advice. One of the things that I want to really get into is giving advice and then also being open to receiving advice, right? Because a lot of people are really good advice givers, but they're not necessarily the best when it comes to receiving advice. And I think also when to take advice, if when to take advice from the people around us or when it's important to consult a professional. Does that make sense?
It does, and before we even get into it, you said that I was married. I am now divorced, so I think that's important for people to know. A lot of people that I advocate for in their marriage have made it a lot further than I did, so that's
Mhm.
important. That's important information. I was married for 9 years, though, and 9 good years, but back to advice. So
Yeah. So, but I think that you were married for 9 good years, but y'all were actually together a lot longer than that. Like
yeah,
you
yes,
were
off and on
committed.
forever.
Right. Y'all were together a lot longer than that. So I think that's important to mention too. I kind of group it all together. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the relationship
Yeah,
time, like the relationship and the marriage was just like, oh, let's do this. It just seemed like the natural progression, right?
right,
On a
right.
already long-term relationship because you were already together for a long time at that point.
Yes. Yes, since high school, off and on since high school.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think, like when it comes to marriage, like what do you think? Because sometimes we make up marriage to be, I don't want to say something that it's not. We have these myths about what marriage should look like. And then in reality, it doesn't actually look like that. So what do you think? Like when it comes to marriage and myths, what do you think about that?
Advice,
Okay.
let's talk about advice because when you were talking about advice, you brought up something that made me think. And sometimes you have to know when you're speaking with someone outside of your marriage, as a listener, you have to know when you're just listening to hear someone vent and when they're asking you for your advice. So it's important to know the difference. Venting is very different than let me let this person finish and then give them some advice. So that's super important and something that I had to learn because I would say when we were younger, we were going to give our opinion one way or the other. And an opinion is not always needed.
Right.
Most importantly, when you are married and you are seeking advice, you should seek advice from someone who is married. Like your single friend with the boyfriend cannot give you advice. If you have a friend that's cheating or doing things that you don't want in your marriage, that is not a good person for advice. So I feel like you should only seek advice from people who have successful marriages, realistic marriages. No marriage is perfect, but you should be getting advice from someone who, you know, is an advocate for your relationship and who wants to see you succeed. And that's really important because not everybody wants to see you in a good marriage. And those are the people that can tear your marriage apart. So I think that is two of the most important things. So someone who's married, someone who's happily married, someone who's going to give you good advice. And when you are venting and you have those moments, you have to vent to someone who loves your spouse. My mother-in-law, may she rest in peace, she was amazing. If I wanted to complain about her son, she would listen, she would tell him off, and we would move on. But you start talking about your marriage to your friends, and your friends are going to be mad for 20 years. So it's like you have to go to someone who loves your spouse and wants to see you win within your marriage. And I think that is just if you can do those 3 things, I think you can probably make it in your relationship, and there are some things you have to keep to yourself. You can't tell everybody everything, and I just think that's important. There's a lot of people who are no longer married because they got bad advice from someone who wasn't even qualified to give it.
Hmm. That's good. You said a lot. There are a lot of nuggets in there, and one thing that stuck out is that you said that you should be speaking to people who advocate for marriage or right? And
Yes,
that's a good point. Like I do think that that's important that when you're speaking to somebody, you are speaking to somebody who advocates for marriage, but also specifically for your marriage. Because what happens when if somebody is married to somebody and it's not healthy? Like, where you know what I'm saying? Like, what happens then? Because you don't wanna, like abuse for me is a hard no. Like abuse, infidelity, that's a hard no. And I'm so thankful I've never had to give advice to a friend who was married in those situations. But it's like, what about those situations? Like at that point, do you turn off the friend hat, like to the friend of the marriage and then just be a friend to your friend? Or do you continue to advocate? Because some people will. Some people will say, that's your husband. Y'all got to work it out. It don't matter what's happening, and they will continue to advise someone to stay in a relationship that's not healthy. So at what point do you stop being an advocate for the marriage and just be a friend to your friend? Do you know what I'm saying?
That's an excellent point. And like you, I am fortunate enough to not know anybody who's been in that situation. But my advice is just I'm not gonna say it's not free because I don't charge for it, but I don't have the emotional and mental bandwidth to give it to everybody. So I don't give everybody advice on their relationships. And I find that people who are in relationships that have some element of abuse, they're not going to be forthcoming about that anyway. So, there's just not a need. If one of my dear friends was in harm's way, I mean, you know me, you know how we are. So it's like, if
Yeah.
they're in a situation where they're in danger, I'm going to let that be known. That comes first. And same with infidelity. That's kind of like a slippery slope. And I remember you and I talked about this a long time ago. Like what works for one marriage doesn't work for another. So some people have these, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, but just things that are like non-negotiables. Infidelity isn't a non-negotiable for everyone. Verbal abuse isn't a non-negotiable for everyone. Some people are like, I can deal with a certain amount of this, or some women are like, men are going to cheat and they tolerate that. So you also have to meet people where they are. But when it comes to abuse and anything that is a danger, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with that person and be like, you gotta get yourself out of there. I don't even want to think about it because it's too much. Like what would you do if someone came to you and told you their spouse had been physically abusive?
I don't think I've ever been in that situation, but like you said, I mean, you know how we are. And I would like to think that at my big old age, I wouldn't do what I would have done 20 or 30 years ago, but I don't know. Like, I would probably recommend that they attend counseling and I would allow a professional to kind of lead through that. That's what I would do. I would recommend counseling, even though I know a lot of people are not open to it. I think perhaps more people are probably open to it now than they were 10 years ago. So I would as counseling, you know.
Hmm.
And I do know there have been times in my own marriage, and I'm being transparent here, where I'm like, I just cannot do this. And you've been like, girl, it's not that serious. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes when you're in a bubble, for me at that time, what seemed to be very major, I was just like, I can't do it. And you was like, absolutely, y'all can work through this. Like this is not a reason to give up on your marriage.
Right.
I'm so
It's just a
appreciative.
moment.
Yeah, because I probably would not be, still married. Like, if I had been talking to somebody else, somebody less invested in me or my marriage or just my family, period, right? Like, I think that I probably would not be married because some people don't give advice from a good place. So you always have to consider the source. Like you said, you have to consider some people are just for venting and you could never take their advice because their life is in shambles. Their life is constantly in shambles. That's a good point. That's a great point.
Yeah, some people they tell you what they would do. Like, this is what I would do, but it's like especially when I'm giving marital advice, I try to tell people what I think is right, not what this is how I would handle it. This is what I'm gonna say or I would say. It's like what do I think is right, And like you said, just being careful about who you vent to and just knowing that you're going to have your ups and downs in marriages. You're going to love your spouse every day, but you're not going to like them. There are there's lots of little things they can do that you don't like, but you just have to look at the big picture and say, is this a deal breaker? And a lot of the things that irritate us are not deal breakers. Some of them are, but not all of them.
Because there's one thing that you told me a long time ago, and I found this to probably be one of the most true and relatable things anybody has ever told me about marriage is that you'll fall in and out of love with your partner. Because there have been some times where I was like, oh my God, I could drink his bathwater. I love him so much. And then other times where I'm like, give me a skillet. I just want to hit him upside the head with a skillet. Like it's that
Yeah.
extreme. Or sometimes I can't stand to hear his voice, and other times I'm like, "Oh my god, his voice. Oh, his voice just" that is so true. Like, that is you fall in and out of love with, um, your person, and that's something I never experienced before, like, even in a relationship, like, that whole level of falling in and out of love. In a relationship, for me, once the love was gone, it was gone, but
Right.
in marriage, you do fall in and out of love, and that's good. Those are some great points, girl. That's some good stuff.
One thing we wanted to discuss too was emotional needs because I think those are very important too. Being in tune with what you need and in tune with what your mate needs. And also understanding that sometimes people don't know what they need until you give it to them. So, like, somebody asks you, well, what do you need? What would make you happy? And you actually have to sit there and think about it sometimes. And then other times you're like, this is what I need. You know what I need. So I think you can speak to that more though.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I had to learn in my own marriage is that I've dealt with trauma throughout my life. So there are some things emotionally that my husband is not equipped to give to me. And that's no slight against him because there are some things that you have to seek professional help for. So I think that I've learned sometimes you can have unrealistic or unfair expectations of your and a lot of
Mhm.
us, many of us have experienced trauma or abuse previously, and we bring that to our relationships. There were things that I thought I was healed from, but I wasn't. And instead of looking to my husband to meet those needs, I had to get professional help. It wasn't something he was able or equipped. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't have been able to meet those needs. So I think that having someone who's willing to meet your emotional needs and then as a person being willing to understand and being honest about the fact that they can't, maybe they're not equipped to help
Mhm.
that way. Do you know what I'm saying? And then having realistic expectations of your partner as it relates to your emotional needs.
Yes, and you were talking about going out and getting the help, working on yourself. That's another thing that people don't understand because I too brought a certain amount of trauma into my relationship because my ex-husband and I came from two-parent homes. Both of our parents were married for a number of years, his until they both passed, mine for about 20 years. But one thing I can say about my parents is that their marriage was dysfunctional. The situation was dysfunctional without telling their business. But they also had this banter, like this way that they would go back and forth, and it involved name calling. And my father and his language, and it's colorful, and he speaks to everyone like that. And it definitely comes from a place of love, but I always thought it was so funny. Like, I would look back at the stuff they said to each other, and I was so amused by it, not knowing that that's not funny. Those aren't things you should be saying to someone you love. And I remember, so I have a little cousin, um, and his mom would have me take care of him. He's probably like 13, 14 years younger than me. But we were down south visiting our great grandmother, and my great aunt and her husband were having an argument. And they were like going back and forth and calling each other stupid and stuff. And I thought it was hilarious, and I looked over at my little cousin, he was like 3, and he was like, "No, no, no," and his feelings were so hurt, and it just made me so sad to see him like that, and it was at that moment that I knew, this is not good. This is not normal. This is not what a relationship would be, or should be. So as married people, we also have to keep in mind that the example that we provide to our children within that relationship is what they're going to move forward with. So if
Yeah.
we're abusing one another, they're going to go into marriages or relationships and abuse one another. And that's what I brought to my relationship. That is what my ex husband and I brought: colorful language, lots of funny profanity, but we just made an agreement at some point that we're not gonna name call. period. We're not going to do that. And we stopped. So, you have to be very mindful of bringing that baggage in and mindful of the fact that your children are watching you. And do you want to send a bunch of unhealed kids out in the world? So,
Yeah,
very
I'm
important
sorry.
stuff, that trauma.
And I'm laughing because I'm just thinking of some of the things that, your father has said.
And still says, and still says,
I'm sorry. I was just thinking of like, oh my God, did she be up was she over there calling Big C a jive turkey? And
no, that job turkey was a nickname. That was a nickname. That wasn't one of the bad ones.
that was relatively mild in comparison. No, but
Yes.
I get what you're saying because I always say that like my husband is a fair fighter. Like he
Mhm.
fights fair. Like he doesn't name call, he sticks to the issue. But for me, like, if it gets to a point where it's an argument for me, do you know what I'm saying? Because my mother was like, my mother would have me ready to jump off a building with some of the stuff
Your mother did not play.
she did not play. Like, she was like with her, she would just go to hell. Like, she would go to hell.
Mhm.
I don't go that far with my husband, but I definitely, if we're arguing, if this what you want to do, now, I
Right,
learn to be more respectful and
right,
communicate with him during an argument. Because sometimes you say things and, I would be like, well, this is how I felt. It was true. And if it was hurtful to you, then that's your issue. That's something you need to work on. And then I had to get to a point where I'm like, I shouldn't be saying things that hurt him. If he's hurt by
right,
because that's not the point. The point is not to hurt him. The point is to be heard. Do you know what I'm saying? And
right.
because I'm like, well, he's not hearing me. So if you're not gonna hear me, you're gonna fail me. And that wasn't right, right? It's not right. So you're right. Respectful communication is important because our children are watching and they definitely do things that they saw us do in
Yeah.
relationships. I'm a witness to
Yeah, I'm
that.
a whole walking and talking example of somebody who is still I'm still working on myself at this big age. There are
Mhm.
things that I'm like, how would I function if I was married again? Because the issues still exist or just the pattern of what people I have been with, how they keep saying the same things about me. So I'm like, it's gotta be true, but how do you deal with it? You got to be able to receive it. And so that marriage I came from is the reason that I am the way that I am. But you have to identify that within yourself and work on it. And to when you're married, and you know how we used to be. I was telling so my son is Carlos. I was telling Carlos the other day how we said such horrible stuff to each other when we were younger. And I'm like, it was so bad that we don't even want to discuss it now. And what that taught me is that I never want to speak to someone I love in that way. Like, it bothers me so much if I'm fighting with someone that I love. Like, it keeps me up at night, especially when when I've said something that I know would hurt them. So I feel so much better about myself when I either say nothing or put a lot of thought, some AI responses out there that are a little bit more sensitive than what will come out of my mouth, and then just convey it in love instead of anger and, abuse and going to hell. Like, yeah, we can go underneath there.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we want to do. And I feel better about myself when I don't do that, when I refrain from saying what was on my mind. I'm like, you might be evolving after all. So it's
But it's a
very
lot.
important.
That's right. Like it took us years to learn it. So it's probably gonna take us more time to unlearn all of that stuff.
Right.
Because we didn't
Right.
do it early and then we practiced it. So it's gonna take some time to unlearn it. But when you speak about like when we talk about like things that we like how much of your exposure to marriage before you got married kind of shaped how you did marriage, right? Like when it comes to like unspoken rules and even managing like your family and your money, like how much of that did you bring from what you saw and how you were raised into your marriage? Or did the two of you kind of chart your own course? This is what our marriage is gonna look like. And did you talk about that before you got married? Like was that a conversation that you had like, well, in our marriage we're gonna do this, or did you just kind of because y'all were together for a long time. So was your marriage an extension of what happened in a relationship, or did you kind of switch things up a little bit?
It was very different because my ex-husband he was similar to my father with his language, but he was different. He was very loving and affectionate. So when we were together, it was like that puppy love. We were so into each other. I can't even believe I was that way about anybody. So no, we did not think about that. It wasn't something that we thought about. We just found ourselves together, and it wasn't until things got bad that we started looking at like, well, what's going on here? And when you talk about money and finances and stuff, no, we didn't talk about any of that stuff. We just went into it and we just kind of learned as we went. And it's funny because I think I was 27 when we got married, and I thought I was so wise and brought so much to the table. A 27-year-old, you may have a lot going for yourself, but you are not wise yet. You may be smart, you may be intelligent, but you do not know all the things. If I had it to do all over again, I would have waited a little bit longer because I think there's a certain aspect of maturity that you need when you're in marriages also. But some people start having kids really young, and that's like, there's nothing you can do about that. But I brought all of that stuff, like, I showed up as I was and did not have a plan, and, you know, obviously, the marriage didn't work out. It could have, but, it didn't, but no, we didn't have a plan at all.
Yeah, I think probably more people don't than do. Like, I think
Mhm,
it's for people to like actually sit down, we're going to do this. I was a little bit older when I married my husband, and he had already been divorced, and we had children. So there were discussions that we had to have as it related to the children. And because he was in the military and I was moving my whole life to be with him, we had to have certain discussions. But I think that for us, we our relationships were similar. I always joke and say that we married the same person. Like our exes are very similar. And I think that because of that, we had shared experiences that kind of shaped how we acted or governed ourselves
mhm,
as it relates to like finances. I remember I agreed to be a stay-at-home mom because it just made sense. Like we had these
mhm,
kids and daycare or whatever. And for me, that was a lot because that meant that I didn't have any of my own money like coming into
mhm.
it's like, I had to everything came from him, except the child support. Well, that was for the kids or whatever. But it was huge for me because I've been working since I could work. Like before I was legally able to work. I babysat and then
Mhm.
I got work permit when I was like I worked in the summers at 12, and as soon as I could get a work permit, I was working at McDonald's. Like I've been working forever. I've never, I don't know what it's like to just I didn't have parents who supported me fully. So, I've always supported myself and even helped my younger siblings. So this was uncharted territory for me. And I was not very comfortable with it. But my husband wasn't the type to be like, oh, well, he didn't give me money. Like I had equal access to the money. My name
Mhm.
on the accounts and all of that. And I'll never forget. And I'm probably gonna edit this out, but I think it was in our first year of marriage. And we had this really big argument. I don't know if I ever told you this, but he went into my wallet and took the debit cards. And I was horrified, and I was like, "No, no, no, Negro." It took me years to get over that, and I had my own accounts, I still
Mhm.
had my accounts with him, but because of that, I have even now to this day, I still have, accounts that he can't see, and he's like, "Oh, I don't like." I'm like, "No, baby, you did this. Like, this is what
Right.
you did. That forever changed how we work or whatever." I don't know where I was going with that, and like I said, I'm probably gonna edit it out because that's a lot, but that's something that I was just like, "Oh, but this what we doing? Okay." Okay. But all of that to say, we have a traditional marriage in the sense that, my husband like is the provider and then I like take care of things in the house and the kids. And for us, it just works out better that way. We both talk about our finances. We plan for what we have to do, but that's something that's relatively new. Because a lot of times when you have a bunch of kids, planning stuff is like you could make the best plans, but another parent is gonna come in and mess up. They're not gonna do the visitation the way you agreed, so you're gonna have to buy extra tickets. Like there's always an element of chaos for us, at least, when you're dealing with other parents. So as much as we could plan back then, we tried to, but now since we're just actively raising one child, we are a lot better at planning for what's ahead.
But I want to ask you because now you have a lot of years in and they have gone so
Yes.
fast. And I actually think that you would be like a wonderful mentor for someone else who is getting married. And I know that one of your sons is married. So if someone was coming to you and they wanted your advice, like what are some of the things that you would tell them in preparation for their marriage? Like, what are some pieces of advice that you would tell them?
Before they're married or since they're married? Because
Let's say they're about to get married. Yeah, they're going to get married. What would you tell them?
I would tell them for as much as possible to kinda keep their families out of it. Like, I know you had a good relationship with your mother-in-law, but that's not always like, I think I'm a good mother-in-law to my daughter-in-law. You know, I love her, I love them, I'm team them, and she can say whatever to me about my son, and I'm not gonna hold it against her, right? But, not everybody is like that. So I would say, if as much as possible, keep what y'all have between y'all, and then just don't invite people into your marriage. I think that's a lot of mistakes people make is they allow other people to have input and opinions in their marriage. And if you're actually taking the steps to marry this person, then they have to be first in your life. Like they have to be a priority. Even like I said, we came into this with kids, and I think that some of our big mistakes is that we sometimes we put the kids above one another. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we put what was best for the kids ahead of what was best for our marriage. So I think that as much as possible, put one another first. And then I'm a Christian. So for me, a lot of my beliefs are built around that, like my religious beliefs and my spirituality. So I would say, for whatever their faith is, to incorporate the elements of their faith or the pillars of their faith into their marriage as it relates, you know, and just always be willing to forgive your partner. Cause, you know, I struggle with, I can hold on to some stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's hard to kind of work through that stuff. And I thank God every day that I'm married to somebody that's always willing. He's so forgiving and he's always willing to forgive. He models that for me.
Hmm.
So I would also say, and this is from my husband, because he told me, he said, I focus more on what's wrong in our marriage instead of what's right. He's been saying that to me in a different way for a long time. But so I think focus more on what's right and what's working and why it's worth it instead of what's not working. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's great advice. That's
Yes.
what about resentment? Because when we're in relationships, not even just marriage, resentment builds, as people create patterns of behavior because some people are coming from an unhealed place or a place where they don't want to do any work on themselves and then they're putting that on your doormat for you to deal with. So, how do you deal with issues that make you resentful when you're in a marriage?
I think that for me, and this is where I say counseling has played such a big role in it because unpacking the resentment has helped me. Oftentimes, when I found the things that I resented him most for, perhaps I don't even think he was aware of
Mhm.
why or why the resentment was so deep. Like, you know, he would be like, well, why are we still here? Like, you know, and I think that for me, understanding the root of it because it's not just what happened. Like there's something underneath it that's triggering or that's making you feel this way. And I know that for me, it was feeling unheard or like my feelings about something that matter. So ultimately, it wasn't what he did or what I thought he did. Most times, it was the way he responded to it. Like you're not even gonna listen to or consider how I feel about it. So I would say that being honest and being willing to unpack why the resentment is there, and then also listening to and trusting your partner 'cause there will be times when my husband will be like, "Well, I didn't even mean that. I didn't mean for it to come across like that," or that's trying to do. So being willing to hear them out and trusting them enough to kind of believe what they say and trust what they say, but then also for you, like digging deep and saying, "Why does this bother me so much? Like, why is this such an issue? And why can't I move past it?" 'Cause some
Yeah.
I can say honestly, probably most of it was about me and how I was processing what was happening. Not to say that, he has not done some. Cause what did you say once? You said men do dumb shit. Like you was like, men gonna always do some dumb. You remember that? You said that to me. You was like,
Yeah.
always do some dumb stuff, right?
They do. I mean, they do. They do. It's kind of it's difficult too because especially when you're dealing with someone that does not always hear you. You know, like every time you bring something, they don't receive or they get defensive about what it is you're saying. Like if you say, when you said this, it made me feel this way, that turns into an argument. I'm just telling you, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Why are we arguing about the fact that you hurt my feelings? And like you said, therapy is everything, but some people just they aren't always going to go to therapy. How do you deal with it when somebody's not willing to even do the work on themselves?
I don't know. I don't know that that would work for me, and I don't know how I can give some advice to somebody who wasn't willing to look at themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know that I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Like, what would you
No,
how would you handle? Because I don't
that is the answer. I mean, and I'm not even talking about marriage now, but it's like until you get some therapy, come back and talk like you
let's talk about something
show
else.
me the appointment because it's like we can't keep doing that because people will they'll bring you down. It's like you make all these strides to be better and try to better yourself, and then you encounter people who don't want to do the same. So I do think there is a point where you have to say, if you don't get yourself some therapy, we don't have anything to talk about.
Right.
So
It's not fair. Do you think what's something that like a myth or a tradition you think that causes the most harm, like in modern marriages? Like when we look at what marriage is today,
one of the biggest myths is that having kids will save the marriage. And we both know that kids make a relationship so much more complex. If anything, a kid is going to destroy the relationship. So that is one myth. Like if you already have a relationship that is on its last leg and you think, well, let me go ahead and throw this kid in the mix.
and
I
say,
think that is the biggest myth. It's a cliche one, but people still keep doing it. But once you know how it is once you have kids.
yeah, yeah.
What about you? What myths can you think of?
One of the things that we had to kind of dispel was the whole don't go to bed angry, like not going to bed angry. And my husband used to take that literally. Like I'm like, I'm going to, we can't, I'm not dealing with this right now. So I think it's important to take a break. Like, if you're at capacity, it's important to be like, no, we're going to have to table this. Let's table it until I'm ready to discuss it. And that may be a day, it may be 2 days, it may be a week. You know what I'm saying? But learning how to just let some stuff be until you're able to address it, I think is goal. Because just not letting the sun go down on your anger, what does that even look like? Do it look like us arguing, or do it look like one person just giving in and being like, okay, so we can go to sleep? Like that's not even real because then you'll have the same argument over and over again. So we definitely had to get to a place where we gave each other space, mainly him giving me space because I'm like, I can't deal with because he was ready to hash it out. I'm like, not today, baby. I'm too angry. This might end in fist. We got to take a break here. So yeah,
And I think too, don't go to bed angry. See, no, that's one that I like. I don't think that it's realistic to get all of it out, but I think that, and this is because like when I was married, if we could have like a knockdown, drag out argument, and we would both be pissed, and we may be in different rooms, and then an hour later, he's like, "You want something from the store?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bring me some shit." And for me, it was kind of the same thing. So it's like we're having a peaceful moment now. We're not the issue still exists, but I don't like the idea of having relationships where you have this issue and it shuts everything down and then you're not talking for extended periods of time, you're not speaking. I don't that's the kind of don't go to bed angry that I don't like. Just like, we going to circle back to this, but we're not about to not be speaking for 2 months, or you're walking in the house and giving that person a cold shoulder because that turns into, "Well, I thought the marriage was over, so I called up my friend," and that's kind of when people get involved. So it's like you have to keep those lines of communication open so people don't have any misunderstanding in that relationship and they understand you still here and present in this marriage, but we got to work through it. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But sometimes I may need a day. I may need a day or two. You know what I'm saying? It may be that deep for me. And I will hope that in my marriage, there's enough respect there to say, I'm gonna give her time and I don't need to involve another person. Cause I think that anybody who would involve another person is not ready for marriage. Like that's immature.
Right, right.
That is so immature. Do you
And
know
I'm
what
talking about I'm talking about, like, weeks and months where
yeah,
there's no
yeah.
communication. Giving somebody their space, or somebody saying, "You know what? I'm not in the space to deal with this right now." That's definitely important. That's a boundary, and that's something that someone has to respect. If someone says, I don't wanna deal with this in the moment," or "This isn't working for me. This is kinda drain me. Let me come back." That's necessary. So, what you're talking about, like, give me some space and we can revisit that's good. But, just meeting in the middle.
Yes. What do you think, like, if you could think about it, like, since we're talking about conflict, like, what do you think it looks like to resolve it in a healthy way? Like, what does conflict resolution look like in a marriage?
Unfortunately, more times than not, the person you're dealing with doesn't see the perspective. But I remember when I was married, we had this one issue where my husband heard one side of a conversation that I was having on the phone. And he's
Mhm.
taking the words that I said, and he's not hearing the other person's words. And I'm like, this is what was said to this is what the other person was saying. And this is what I was saying. And this was one of those things that he kept bringing back up. Like, I'll never forget when you said this, that, and the third. And I'm like, and finally, I guess he thought about it. And we're talking about years later. And he put it together in his mind. He's like, I thought about it. And that does make sense. I hear what you were saying now. I think it's very important that we try and listen to understand, and like you said, not listen to respond, but listen to understand, to really, I worked at Amazon, and the conversation that you have with people who are in trouble, like if you're a people leader, is to seek to understand. And
Mm,
seek to understand is important in all facets of life. So this person has done something to piss you off. Let's not go at it like, you know, get defensive from the start. I want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand why you said that. And if you look at it from that perspective, I think it looks a lot easier. So, in a perfect world, one of those healthy interactions is one where both of you are seeking to understand and not just looking to respond or say what it is you want to say and then block out what they're saying.
did you have to read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Because,
I
that's one of
did.
I'll never forget that one, is seek to understand and be understood. That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that, um, that's probably the best one, like, when it comes
Hmm.
to repair, but I also think that it's important to be willing to, um, accept that I don't even know how I can say this. Just to be willing to accept that resolution for somebody else might not look like the way that it does for you, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Expect like, somebody else may think, "Oh, well, I thought we was done with this. I thought we was finished with it." And for you, it may not be finished. And I think it's important to understand that for them, does that make sense? Like for them, it's done, it's finished, it's wrapped up. But for you, it may not be, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that they don't care about how you feel. It's just that for them, it's a non-issue for them. But you can still feel the way that you feel about it. And it's almost like agreeing to disagree respectfully, right? Like we feel the same way about this, but we can agree to disagree respectfully. Because one thing we kind of touched on was in laws. And think that we kind of, just married people in general, kind of give in laws a lot of access, or we allow them to have a larger impact on our marriage than they should, right? In so many ways, like we allow them. And I think that when you have a great set of in laws, I think that's perfect. That's an ideal situation. You have that extra level of support, but sometimes you might not be. You might not have those in laws that are involved and that are really good and that are positive for your marriage. So you probably cannot relate to that or can even navigate, right? Like what advice would you have for somebody? And that's it.
Well, you know.
somebody, and you've given me a lot of good advice throughout the years.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, family members who are not advocates of your relationship, they can't be in the equation. They can't be part of the equation. I had a situation where I had a family member who, felt away, and it's like you got to just put your foot down and be like, "This is my person and we're not going to go there." We're not like they're the ones that shouldn't have access to your relationship. They everybody doesn't want you to win. And furthermore, I think people have to look at it, and this is dealing with mom and dad too. It's like, were you married? Did you have a successful marriage? Did it work out for you? Because if it didn't work out for you, then you're not necessarily in the best position to be giving me advice. So
Mhm.
you have to say, like we said, this is what we got and this is what we don't want. So this is not who we're going to go to. Like that can still be your sister, your brother, your mom, your dad. You can still have that relationship. But when it comes to us and our marriage, I'm gonna get what I need from somebody else, and I just think that's imperative, and it is something that I can't relate to because, I still love all of my in-laws, and my ex-husband and I still have a really good good relationship. We're friends, we get along well, we don't beef a lot, and I just think that's so important. Like, you have to keep those people out, and because we kept people out, we did not have a lot of bad we didn't have a lot of family drama. But I think you navigate situations well, but ultimately those can be your confidants.
Mm.
And you have to put your foot down with that. Like, hey, your dad doesn't like me or your dad thinks this about me. Do you want him to dislike me even more? You can't talk to him about me. And that's
And you
just is
can't.
what it is. That's all I can say.
I would also say is that disrespect towards your partner is just a no. Like, I don't let nobody disrespect. You're not gonna talk crazy to my husband. That's just something we're not gonna do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, do not play. You not about, and I don't care who it is. You're not gonna talk
right.
to my husband.
Yes, you can't even love your husband's statuses. So
Mhm.
I don't know, like, who's that putting that love on both posts? Like, you better turn that love into a like. But yeah, that's how it should be. Like, you don't play about your person, and
Right.
I'm like that about everybody that I love. Like,
Mhm.
I know my baby through and through. I know my son, but it's like you call him a name or something, like
That's a
I
wrap.
discipline him. You know, I got this. And that's how we have to be. We like don't play about our person. That's how if that is our mantra, like I'm not gonna play about this one, you'll be good.
Yep.
You will be good.
Yep. Yep. Yes, yes, yes. So we are at time, Angel. I want to be very respectful of your time. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Do you have any parting words? Like, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners before you give your final thought? Can you tell us the name of your YouTube channel? I want to hear from you, and then I'll also link it on the video.
My YouTube channel is One Angel for Travel. And my parting words are marriages work, and you have to be willing to put in the work every day. Like, you have to be able to willing to show up and advocate for that relationship every day to make it work. And as long as you both are committed to doing that, as cliche as it sounds, it'll work. Like you said, no disrespect, not going to let somebody disrespect your partner, not going to let them talk crazy playing your partner's face, and communication.
Mhm.
Communication. So,
That's good. That's a great one. I would say for me is that I always say that being a mother came easy to me, but being a wife was something I really had to grow into. And I think that it's important to always be willing to grow and to have your own you design with your partner what your marriage is gonna be. Like, don't base it off of what you've seen or just you together, y'all kind of people always make a vision board, make a one for your marriage, like what you want your marriage to be like. Another thing I always say is people don't understand the value of marriage until they need to, right? Like people are in these long-term relationships with these people and they don't understand that when the rubber hits the road, being his wife outweighs his longtime girlfriend. Do you hear me?
right.
It's not just a piece of paper. Like it's something so much
Right.
and a piece of paper. And it's one of the most rewarding, it's the hardest thing I've ever had aside from motherhood, but it's also been so rewarding in so many ways. Cause I think that you grow in it with the right person. You're always building something together. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Angel will have to have me back because this was a great conversation. I think I want to have you back when we talk about parenting these young adults or parenting and how different it is in this stage versus,
Yes,
when they were younger. So I think that'll be a
we
good
could talk about that.
dig into together. So thank you, girl. Thanks,
Yes,
sis.
thank you for having me.
Bye, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and then we'll see you next time.